Let's go Dolphins! Behind the scenes, tough decisions are being made, familiar names are leaving the roster, and the front office is clearly preparing the team for a new phase. But the real question is, are these the first steps in building a stronger Dolphins team for 2026, or is there an even bigger plan underway that fans haven't fully grasped yet? Before revealing everything that's happening, do me a small favor. If you truly believe the Miami Dolphins can recover and return to competing at the highest level, like this post right now, and I want to see how confident this fan base really is, go to the comments and write, "I believe in the Dolphins," so we can show how many optimistic fans are supporting this team, no matter what. Now let's get straight to the news that has everyone talking. The Miami Dolphins have started making moves to get under the salary cap, and two names have already been affected. The team has released fullback Alec Ingold and kicker Jaylen Sanders. These weren't completely unexpected decisions if you've been paying attention to the cap situation, but that doesn't make them any less significant for the roster and for the fans who watch these players contribute to the team. Let's start with Alec Ingold. He was a solid presence at fullback, a tough and reliable player who did the dirty work that often goes unnoticed. But the reality is that offensive systems evolve, and sometimes a player simply doesn't fit the direction a team is going anymore. There's also the possibility that the Dolphins want to get younger at that position or change how they structure the offense moving forward. Either way, the decision clearly reflects a shift in priorities for the coaching staff and the front office. Then there's Jaylen Sanders, and this one carries a bit more emotional weight for some fans. Sanders had some memorable moments during his time in Miami. One of the biggest games many fans remember was the matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, when he converted 5 kicks and helped the Dolphins secure a huge win against the winning team during the 2023 season. Those kinds of performances stick in the memory of a fan base. However, last season he didn't play, and in today's NFL, availability and cap value matter a lot. When a team is trying to maneuver financially, every roster spot and every contract becomes part of the equation. So what do these cuts actually mean financially? By releasing Alec Ingold and Jaylen Sanders, the Dolphins are expected to free up about $6.9 million in cap space. That's a significant step toward getting the team closer to being cap compliant. Once those numbers are factored in, the Dolphins are projected to sit somewhere around $5 to $6 million in available cap space. Although that figure is slightly affected by other roster moves like bringing back Cameron Good and tagging Ethan Bonner. But here's where things start getting even more interesting. There are still potential moves on the table. One possibility being discussed is the idea of trading Minkah Fitzpatrick, which could push the Dolphins' cap space closer to $12 million. And beyond that, there are additional financial adjustments that could come later in the offseason. For example, moves involving Tua Tagovailoa and Bradley Chubb being processed after June 1st could create additional savings, though that money wouldn't become available until early June. All of this tells us something very important. This offseason might not be flashy at the beginning. Instead, it's likely going to be what many insiders call a slow burn. The Dolphins may target cheaper free agents rather than big headline signings, with names like Roger McCreary, Eric Stokes, and James Pierre being mentioned as potential lower-cost defensive options. In other words, the Dolphins are clearly entering a phase where financial discipline and roster restructuring are the priority. And if more moves are coming, and it definitely looks like they are, this could end up being one of the most transformative offseasons this franchise has had in years. And this is where the situation around the Miami Dolphins starts getting even more intriguing. Because what we are seeing right now is only the first layer of a much bigger financial puzzle the team is trying to solve before the 2026 season really begins. The releases of Alec Ingold and Jaylen Sanders were important moves, but they are just the opening chapter in what could become a long sequence of roster adjustments designed to give the front office enough flexibility to operate. Right now the Dolphins are still navigating a tight salary cap situation compared to many other teams around the league. When you look across the NFL, several franchises have already created significant space to attack free agency. Teams like the Saints, Chiefs, Bills, Vikings, and others have already restructured contracts or moved money around to give themselves room to maneuver. Meanwhile, Miami is still working through that process step by step, and that's why fans shouldn't necessarily expect fireworks immediately. In fact, the expectation around the team is that the early days of free agency could feel relatively quiet for Dolphins supporters. The front office is likely going to prioritize cap management and strategic depth moves rather than chasing expensive headline signings. It might not be the most entertaining stretch of the offseason at first, but it could be exactly what the team needs in order to stabilize the roster financially. There's also another reality Dolphins fans are beginning to prepare for: the end of certain eras within the organization. One of the conversations circulating behind the scenes involves the possibility of further major roster decisions that could reshape the identity of the team moving forward. When those announcements eventually become official, they're going to spark massive debate across the fan base because some of those names have been central figures in Miami over the past several seasons. And when that moment comes, it won't just be about transactions. It will be about reflection. Fans will look back at the highs, the frustrating moments, the big plays, the missed opportunities, and the constant belief that this team was one step away from something special. That's the emotional side of football that statistics and salary caps can't fully capture. But from a strategic standpoint, the Dolphins' approach right now is very clear. This is a calculated reset of the financial structure of the roster. Instead of aggressively spending right away, the organization appears to be focusing on building flexibility so they can make smarter moves later in the offseason. And that's why you're hearing discussions about potential lower-cost defensive targets like Roger McCreary, Eric Stokes, and James Pierre, players who could add depth without putting additional strain on the salary cap. Those types of moves may not dominate national headlines, but they often end up being some of the most important pieces of a roster over the course of a long NFL season. Championship teams are rarely built only with stars. They're built with the right combination of talent, depth, and financial balance. So what we're witnessing right now could actually be the Dolphins quietly laying the groundwork for the next phase of the franchise. And Dolphins fans, this is where you come in. If you've stayed with me until this point in the video, it shows you truly care about what's happening with this team. So make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you love staying up to date with Miami Dolphins news, and keep an eye on the next video on the screen because more developments could be coming sooner than people expect. And there's another important layer to this entire situation that Dolphins fans should pay close attention to, because these roster decisions are not happening in isolation. They are part of a larger strategy that the organization appears to be executing as it tries to reshape the team while dealing with one of the most challenging salary cap situations in the league right now. When a team finds itself near the bottom of the league in available cap space, every single decision becomes magnified. That means releasing players, restructuring contracts, and potentially exploring trades are all tools the front office has to use carefully. The Dolphins are clearly entering that phase where every move must serve a bigger purpose for the roster moving forward. And if you look closely at the pattern of what's happening, you can see the front office prioritizing flexibility. By creating even a few $1 million in cap room through the releases of Ingold and Sanders, the team gives itself the breathing room it needs to start planning the next steps of the offseason. That cap relief may seem small compared to other teams, but for Miami right now, every dollar matters. Another thing fans should understand is that the Dolphins are competing in a league where other teams are aggressively creating financial space at the same time. Franchises like the Saints and Chiefs have already been moving money around, restructuring contracts, and opening up cap space to stay competitive in free agency. Meanwhile, Miami is still in the stage of adjusting its financial structure before it can fully participate in that market. This is why patience will be extremely important for Dolphins fans over the next few weeks. The reality is that the most dramatic part of this offseason may not be the signings. It may be the roster adjustments that happen before those signings even become possible. That includes potential trades, contract restructures, and more difficult personnel decisions that could reshape key parts of the team. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, Dolphins fans, it becomes clear that this offseason is shaping up to be one of the most strategic and carefully managed periods the franchise has faced in recent years. Every move the organization is making right now appears to be focused on one main objective: creating the flexibility needed to reshape the roster and give the team a real chance to compete again in the 2026 season. The releases of Ingold and Sanders were not just isolated roster decisions. They were part of a necessary process to start clearing cap space and allow the Dolphins to begin adjusting the financial structure of the team. In today's NFL, the salary cap is just as important as talent on the field. Teams that manage their cap correctly can reload, add depth, and build sustainable success, while teams that ignore it often find themselves stuck without options. Right now, Miami is doing the difficult work first. The front office understands